Live in. We're live and recording. Good afternoon, everybody. How are we doing? Hope we're all staying safe and well. I'm Alex Chisnell, hosting today for the Festival of Enterprise. I'm joined by my good friend, Jonathan Bowman-Perks.
Hello, Alex.
Hi there. So we've got people from all over the country watching today. In fact, even as far as Dubai. But thank you, Samantha from cloudy and rainy Dunstable, Alison from Dumfries, Andrea from Dubai, W. Young from Sheffield, Kent as well. Yeah, Socky's here from Cardiff, my hometown. Brisbane as well. Peter from Brisbane. Wow, you're covering the globe, Jonathan, not just the UK. I wasn't expecting that at all. Brilliant. Well, look, thank you all for joining us today. This is part of our business support service here at the Festival of Enterprise. We'd rather have been at Olympia, clearly, listening and seeing Jonathan in person, but here we are online due to the current situation. Everybody locked down, but we will do our best to try and give you some tactics, some tips. Jonathan's Inspiring Leadership podcast. If you haven't heard of that, you need to go and check that out. That is a top 10 podcast from the UK to Australia and everywhere in between. Jonathan's going to share something with us afterwards that I can pass on to you, like a free chapter of his book, I believe. Jonathan, was that right?
That's right. Yeah, the ebook. Yeah.
Brilliant. And I'll be able to email everybody after this with some links as well, so you can find out more about Jonathan and how he might be able to help you and your organization. So he helps global leaders from a lot of the big blue chip companies, right through from, CEOs of startups. He's had 20 years in business, 20 years in the military. So he's got the experience to know what he is talking about. So we're talking inspiring leadership in crisis and unprecedented times. We do hear, that phrase, and it's 100% correct. These are unprecedented times. And I think there has been a real leadership vacuum in a lot of industries to a certain degree. So this is why I was keen to get Jonathan on to talk about something that he knows infinitely well. So questions, people, post them up into the chat box. That means Jonathan can see them as well. Let us know if you are a business leader, if you are a CEO, or are you a director, are you an employee? Interested to know what kind of people we've got on board today's live webinar with us, so we can kind of model what we're talking about and the questions that we've got for Jonathan as well. So just let us know what kind of role you have in your business. And without further ado, I'm going to focus on Jonathan's presentation. So I'm going to open that up now. You'll also see little thumbnails of Jonathan and I in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen once I open this up. But yeah, Jonathan, over to you. I'm going to share the screen now.
Thank you, Alex. This won't be your first crisis in your life, and it certainly won't be your last. But it is, however, going to be the hugest, the greatest seismic shift that you will ever face. In 1960, the President John F. Kennedy said that in the Chinese language, the word crisis is composed of two characters. The first one is danger, and the second one is opportunity. So let's focus on the opportunity that comes with that. And the purpose of this session is I'm going to spend about 30 minutes sharing some personal stories, some tips, and some anecdotes. And then I'm going to be opening up to questions. I want to allow a good amount of time for questions on any topic around leadership and the inspiring leadership research and work that my wife and I have done over the last, I suppose, 40 years. So let's have a look at this inspiring leadership work that we did. I'm going to take you around the campus from MQ round to Legacy. My first story is around moral quotient, MQ. And my mother, and both my mother and my father, lived by their values. And I remember as a small child, probably aged about 7, sitting on the wall, swinging my legs with my friends, and we were laughing and joking. It was a summer's day. And in Halifax, in Yorkshire, where I grew up, they had a gala. And at the gala, they always have these floats, they call them. They're big flatbed trucks with displays on the back, people dancing and singing and advertising their various businesses. And there was one that was coming along, and it was for Amnesty International. It had a huge cage on it with a woman in rags, wailing and reaching out with her hand. She had tears down her ashen face. She was covered in soot and dirt, and she looked filthy and in rags. And we're all laughing. Oh, look at that woman. Doesn't she look stupid? And then my mate nudged me and he goes, Jonathan, that's your mum. And I went, oh no, so it is. Because what do you feel as a small child? Are you embarrassed or not? But the point was, it was just the way my mum was. She was living her values. She believed in releasing people who are in captivity. And of course, a lot of the charity work she does, I've now taken that on with my wife, Leigh. But the point was that she believed in living frugally and doing things right. We used to collect rubbish with the tip of her umbrella in the park, reuse envelopes, live very frugally. She'd used to have those values, which we're going to have in this crisis come out again. Do without, make do, mend, or save up for it. And if you can't afford it, you can't have it. We've forgotten all that. And I look at my own debt that's accumulated in this crisis. I realize I should have listened to her words. But even though I might have been embarrassed at the time, I learned a key lesson about that. And it's about what you will and what you won't do. Which takes me on to another story. On our way from church home, we saw this little old homeless lady who was sitting by the bus stop. She was in a bad way. My mother pulled up beside her, asked her name. Her name was Mary. And then something amazing happened, which I'll tell you about a little later. But I want to leave you with each of these 8 ones with a top tip. And my top tip is moral compass. What is your true north? Think about it. What are you prepared to do? What will you do? And what won't you do? My next story is on PQ, purpose, meaning, vision, and why you do what you do. Our inspiring leadership philosophy that we've developed and the brand that I stand for is built around my father, actually, my father and my mother. But my father was killed when I was 3 years old. And that's the big why and the calling why I'm here talking with you today. And I was at the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst, where I was an instructor. I'd gone there full of beans, thinking I was God's gift. Big mistake, big mistake. I got that so wrong, so arrogant, so conceited, thought I was something special. And I met the best of the best. Each regiment had sent their best officer, and they were far better than me. So my reports, having been outstanding, were now just average. I didn't do average. I hadn't been brought up that way. I was trying to do the best I could. So in this crisis, doing so badly, I wanted to learn from good leaders. So I reached out to those who'd served with my father in the Fleet Air Arm. He was a fast jet pilot. Anybody knew my father killed in November 1964, would they write to his son, Jonathan, wants to know more about the man he's never known. Letters from all over the place. I invited someone to have lunch. We're having lunch. And one of the guys said to me, Jonathan, your father bought my ticket. I said, what do you mean? He said, your father died in my aeroplane. And the other guy who was there at lunch said, Jonathan, I was your father's navigator. He also saved my life. And it was just a stunning moment. And the point he said is, you have a choice, Jonathan. You can be a victim, poor me, brought up with 2 brothers, mum only aged 35 when she was widowed, and everything that's gone wrong in your life is because you haven't got a dad. Or you can make your father's leadership inspiration to us and others your calling. Find men and women like him and your mother, learn how they do it, and pass it on to other people. Pay it forward. So you have a choice. Are you going to be a victim, or are you going to make some success of your life? And so my top tip is, what is your clear burning why, and what's going to be your calling? And if you haven't worked it out yet, work on it. And during this time of crisis, when you're stuck on your own, this is the best time to do it. The third story and the third element is health quotient, energy, health, and well-being. And my wife, Leigh, and I, while we're in lockdown, we're lucky to be on the edge of countryside. So each morning we either take a run, or we do some HIIT training, or we go out for a cycle. And at the end of the day, we always have our what I call a sunset walk, where we've both been on the videos and chasing up, trying to get new business all day long, working on the charity, things like that. But at the end of the day, we connect again with a healthy walk at the end of the day with the dog. So the point is, it's really good for you. It also manages, I occasionally in the past have suffered from depression, and I find that looking after my health and well-being manages that drift into depression. So look after your health and well-being. Even though my wife thinks I'm a bit like a sergeant major and come on, we're going for a run. She goes, I don't want to. But actually she does in the end generally come and join me in the training. So my top tip for you is about having discipline and micro habits. Eat, move, sleep, breathe, walking coaching sessions, which I have with clients when they call me. I don't just spend time on video. I go on walks with them. They have a walk, I have a walk, and we chat on the phone. Next one is IQ. This is about your wisdom and your judgment, your decision making. And my story is really about when I was assistant to the head of the army. It was a big job. I was very excited about doing it, but I was following on from two who'd both been sacked by this ferocious field marshal who was head of the army. And I was in some fear and trepidation of him. He was scared of nothing, but there was one man he was scared of, and that was General Desmond Gordon, who'd been his boss when he had been an assistant to the head of the army. And this man did scare him. So he said, whenever he rings, whatever happens, I must go and have lunch. It's got to be really important if I don't miss that one. I've got to have lunch with him if he calls. Weeks go by, I get this call. Hello? And I go, hello, sir. He goes, General Desmond Gordon here. And I go, oh, hello, sir. Right, okay. Lunch, the club, Friday. I go, for the general, sir. Yes. Oh, I'm terribly sorry, sir. He's actually with the Prime Minister. Oh, that's not good enough. Well, what about you? What do you mean, sir? What about me? Would you like to come and have lunch in the club with me? Oh, sir, that's very kind. Thank you. I don't really think I have a life. I'm just an assistant. No. You come and have lunch. Anyway, the day came. You can see what happens, guys. I completely forgot to have lunch with him and gone out of my mind until I saw this flustered colonel who came in. Jonathan, where should you be? I go, I don't know. Where should I be? He goes, the club. I go, oh no. You have that moment when you've forgotten something that's really important to other people. And like you want to die, the trickle of sweat down your back. And can I come up with some excuse or reason? I thought, I just can't lie to you. I'm just dead if I lie. So I wrote a letter of apology. I rang up his wife. Hello, she said. Hello, sir. Ma'am, I was supposed to be having lunch with the general. I completely forgot. And she went, oh, my dear, you are in trouble. Oh, no. And I had to sweet talk my general by giving him lots of things he'd been waiting for. He was really happy. And I stood by his desk. He said, yes, what is it? I said, here he goes. Sir, I made a mistake. Oh, it can't be that important. What did you do? I forgot to have lunch with General Desmond Gordon. Oh, my goodness. Oh, you must ring him. I've rung him. So you must write to him. I've written to him. Just go away, which wasn't you're fired. It was just go away. And I slunk away from him, kept out of sight as much as I could for the next week until I get this phone call about 2 weeks later. Hello? Hello? It's General Desmond Gordon here. Hello, sir. Yes. Lunch, the club, Thursday. I go, for the general, sir? No, for you. Just me, sir? Yes, just you. I won't forget, sir. I know. And you know what? I went. He was so lovely to me. He was wise. He shared lots of things. We talked about stories and mistakes he'd made, mistakes I'd made. And I learned so much from him, which is about the wisdom and dealing with drama and anxiety and the fears that you have and facing the fears and admitting when you've got things wrong. So my tip for this one is, as the Stoics say, and I'm a big fan of Stoic philosophy, control the controllables. Let the other things go, but what you can control, you can control. And keep perspective when things like this crisis is going. Keep things in perspective and keep calm in a crisis. The fifth story is around emotional and social intelligence, or competence, as we call it here. And the thing that I've learned about being a leader, I've been 20 years as an officer in the military. Then I've been a consultant in PwC. I've been in IBM. I've been a managing director of PLC for years. And then also now director of my own business, coaching leaders around the world. And the key thing is to move away from the directive control, the chess master, to more environmental control, where you're bringing people on, you're coaching and developing them. Much more about great questions, Stoic questions or Socratic questions, rather than great statements where you learn nothing more. You're just spouting out all your knowledge. So and thinking about emotional intelligence, I think particularly about the whole business when we're trying to influence and persuade other people. And a bit like the Englishman abroad who just speaks louder if someone else doesn't understand. That's not the approach to do. But I remember the more I've tried to impress clients with how great I am, the less they've believed it. So it's a bit like, do you remember being at a school dance? And certainly I remember when I was a young man, or even the football team. I was always the last one on the touchline when they were picking my team, his team, my team, his. I was always the last one to get chosen. No one wanted me in their team. Not only that, but at the school dance, when the girls came up and they chose someone to dance with, it never chose me. And if I tried to get on well with someone, I oversold and it never worked. So lighten up is the tip. Lighten up. Be truly interested in other people. If you really are genuinely interested in them, then they will buy you and all that you stand for, rather than you overselling and alienating people. 6, resilience quotient and agility. And as Churchill said, success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. And Churchill, who everybody seems to remember from the 1940s as being successful, had numerous stories of utter disasters, from the Dardanelles when he was not first sea lord, but in charge of the Navy, to many different disasters that he had. And I think about a thing called a hero's journey. Conrad wrote a book about the hero's journey, and it's like you build up to some drama, it all goes horribly wrong, you're in the depths of despair, and then you pull yourself out of it and you come back to learn from the experiences. And resilience and the challenges that we are all going through, and if you're not going through a challenge at the moment, I'm delighted for you, but many of us are having some of the toughest times we're going to face in our life, but we'll learn a lot from it. And I think about a double mountain marathon that I did. It's called the Cyprus Double Mountain Marathon, or the Cyprus Walkabout. It was no walk, it was teams of 3 with backpacks and kit from all over the world, normally different military units from around the world, because it was 2 marathons in 2 days up a 6,000-foot mountain, navigating through a series of checkpoints. You didn't know the route until you picked up the map. And we trained very hard for it on the first year, and my team came 3rd at the end, and other teams that I've been training came in the top 50 out of about 100 teams from all over the world. The second year, the commanding officer gave me the task of winning it and getting as many teams as I could of my 8 into the top 10. And on the first day, we were coming near the summit. We had about half an hour to go, and we were exhausted, absolutely exhausted. And we stopped running. We just started to walk. And I just thought, oh, I can't be bothered. I had a corporal and I had a sergeant with me. They were both very fit, probably fitter than me. But we just started to walk a bit. And do you know what? I knew the minutes were ticking away and we would be dropping back from the chance of winning this thing. And I imagined my father, Paul, who I talked about, the pilot, saying, come on, Jonathan, you can do this. You need to inspire them. You need to lead from the front. So I said to the guys, come on, we're going. They went, no, no. And I grabbed them by the front of their shirts. And I pulled them. I said, we're running. And they went, okay, let go. We're going to run. We're with you. And we all ran up this quite steep hill towards the finish line of day 1. And then by the end of the second day on our way down, we were leaping and jumping with the last team off because it was in reverse order. We'd won the first day. And when we came through the finish lines, the Scots Guards, the units I was with, they were playing Scotland the Brave. And the whole battalion seemed to be there, all 600 of them. Maybe there was 300 of them. But the point was the cheering was enormous. Not only had we won, but we'd broken the world record for this. They lifted us up on their shoulders and there was great celebration. I remember that feeling to this day. And that was my equivalent of our hero's journey, from the depths of despair, some of the toughest time in training and not winning, to then my team won and set the world record, and we get 2nd, 3rd, 4th. We didn't get 5th. Someone else did that. 6th and 7th and 8th, whatever it was. We had all the top places, and it's never been done since. But that was a great team working together. It wasn't about me, because our score was when the last man of the 3 crossed the line. So it's no good being a hero on your own. You need your team to come with you in these very tough times, in your own hero's journey. So my tip is, no one remembers who came 2nd. When the going gets tough, the tough gets going. And this is tough times, so you need to get going. And you need to prepare for the recovery and come bouncing back, come fighting back. The penultimate one is brand presence and reputation. And it's also about learning from your mistakes, what people say about you when you're not in the room. With that fearsome general that I was with, I remember another time I almost got fired was we were due to go and see the King of Norway, King Harald V, to ask him to become the colonel of the regiment, which was the Greenhounds, the Yorkshire Regiment. And very special flight been laid on from RAF Northolt, just the two of us flying over to see the king for a private meeting with him in the palace in Norway. And as we're in the car, this general I'm with, it's like swimming in a goldfish bowl with a shark. I mean, he was fearsome, and I just lived in fear of my life of getting something wrong. I got so many things wrong. I was not good as an assistant. It was really not my calling. This is my calling, talking to you guys. That was not my calling. Anyway, he said, got my passport? Yes, sir, I've got your passport. And all the paperwork? Yes, sir, for the flight and the brief that I'm going to speak to the king. Yes, sir, got that. Got your passport? I went, no, sir, I haven't. Well, what do you mean, you idiot? We're half an hour away from your house. We can't go back now. We'll miss the flight. What are you going to do? I'll talk to the Royal Air Force, sir, see if they can help. And just like it was you cut the atmosphere with a knife. I was close to end of my role, about to be fired. Got there and talked to the RAF officer. And you know what? That humanity and the humility of the man just came out. He was a charming wing commander. He said, Jonathan, we'll sort things out for you. Luckily for you, Norway is a NATO country, and I have a form here, a NATO travel order, which we can sign, and it will act as a passport to get you in to see the king. Whew. Sir, I am incredibly grateful to you. I owe my career and my life to you. Thank you very much. So remember to learn from your mistakes. Have the humility and the courage to ask for feedback and to learn from it. And so my top tip is don't live in a bubble. Learn from other people. What is your impact on others? What do people say about you when you're not in the room? Get a coach to give you some feedback, to gather some feedback. And this is the most powerful thing when I'm working with leaders, is getting 360 feedback, doing interviews with people on the phone about them, and then using our inspiring leadership tool, the one you're looking at, the compass, to get 360 feedback on people. And it's incredibly powerful. So seek feedback on the last 30 days and seek feed forward, advice on the two areas that you're choosing to work on for the next 30 days. The final one I want to talk about is legacy, a sustainable value add and the legacy you leave. I'm very proud of my wife, Leigh, and that she 4 years ago set up as the CEO and the founder, the Inspiring Leadership Trust. And it's a charity for vulnerable young women and girls who've been through abuse, modern day slavery, trafficking, mental health issues. And any of you who are watching the news knows that in this lockdown period, the incidence of abuse and deaths of women through abuse has doubled in the lockdown period. It is a serious problem. And she's doing amazing work. She's made it all go virtual and online because we clearly can't meet with them. But one of the women, that young woman who was 18 at the time that Leigh was coaching, was a girl called Georgia. And at the Goldsmiths Hall for the charity gala and the leadership awards that we did 2 years ago, she stood up and she told her story after having had this story explained about the abuse that she'd gone through at the hands of people very close to her. And when she went on stage, I heard the most inspiring leadership speech I have ever heard. It was life-changing. And she attributed the fact she was now going to university and had turned her life around to the leadership coach that she'd had, who was Leigh, who really got to understand her, know her. And because Leigh, in her own term, has been through a difficult and abusive background in her book that she wrote, Inspiring Women Leaders, she was able to relate to Georgia and bring her on and give her the step up. So remember, when you get up in your life, remember to send the elevator back down again for other people who are less successful and less fortunate than you are. So talking about people who are less fortunate, you may wonder what happened to that lady, Mary, who we met homeless and beside the bus stop on our way back from the church. My mother invited her to Sunday lunch. Now, as small children, you'd notice the fact that she hadn't washed and there was a strong odor coming from her. But my mother treated her like she was a member of the family And that, to me, the way you treat someone who can't help you in your career and can't help you get on, give you lots of money, that's the measure of a man or woman, how you treat everybody as if they are with humanity and with humility. And the twist to the tale was, sadly, 10 years ago, my mother had a very bad stroke, almost died, made it through, and was in a nursing home for 2 years, and then had another stroke and sadly passed away. But in the couple of days before she died, while I was sitting there in the nursing home at her bedside, holding her hand, a lady came into the room. It was Mary. And she'd come to see my mother because she'd turned her life around because of what my mother had done, and the ripple that you create in your life when you treat people that way. She'd brought her life around, and she'd come to pay her respects to my mother. So my tip to you is pay it forward. We are not defined by our past. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. That's the end of what I wanted to talk about. I'm now open for questions. So Alex, over to you. I think we're doing well, as promised, under 30 minutes. So we've got lots of times for questions.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Very inspiring. Goosebumps, some of the comments that we've got on here, and haven't lost anybody who started the webinar. So that's a mark of a very good production. So thank you very much indeed, Jonathan, for that. Do you know, I saw that on the news last night, what you just mentioned with your last point about women in particular being abused, and I just don't get it. I just don't. My brain can't comprehend why. What is wrong with people. As a topic for another time, but I was just watching it with my wife, and I was just like, I cannot get my head around that. Why would people? And I get people are in pressured situations and stress levels rising, and some people might not have the luxury of a big home with a garden to escape and all this kind of things. But yeah,
it's
tough.
Shocking.
So I thought I'd bring this up first of all, Jonathan, before the questions that we've got here. So the poll that we've got, interesting. So 40% of people are struggling most with focus.
Yep.
25% with isolation, 20% with exercising, and 15% with stress. 0 for eating.
Great.
Just me then. Just me on the eating front. Okay. Interesting. So yeah, if you haven't, but everybody who's still watching, and that's literally, I said, we haven't lost anybody from this, which is a really healthy webinar. If you can add to that poll, that would be really super useful for us all, especially Jonathan, to know. Thoughts on that? Yeah, Jonathan, take that one away. Delve into that. Okay. I saw you writing them down as well.
Yeah, let me just move on to a couple of slides. Can you see these slides, Alex?
I'll bring it up. Here we go. Focus screen.
Yeah. Okay.
There we go.
Improving your health, energy, and well-being. Eat, move, sleep, breathe, focus, prosper. I won't touch on just people eating healthily. I had a cancer scare in March last year, and luckily I was okay, having gone through it all, and the operation, the checks that was done, which were pretty invasive. But it made me become vegan. Not completely. And who imagined that an army officer would become a vegan? I'm sure my old officer friends would be laughing at me. But no, they wouldn't be laughing, actually. In fact, one or two of them have become vegan themselves, who I've met since. But when you look at knives over forks and cowspiracy and a whole range of things, this virus, and there's a very good film about this, is caused by the crossover between the animal population, mass farming, and the human population. And so if we actually ate more healthily and had less intensive farming, then we wouldn't have these kind of viruses kicking off with the crossover. That's a contentious area, but I'm not completely vegan now. I do occasionally have bits of fish and occasionally a little bit of chicken. But I find a very good thing. We use the Mindful Chef. They're doing very good business, and they just give us enough food to make a meal. And Leigh and I have 5 meals during the week. It's delivered to us, fresh food, and we cook it up. And it's another way of linking together. So what you eat, really important. Move. People can't see here, but I've got a standing desk. It goes up and down. It cost me about 200 quid on Amazon. I probably bought it a couple of years ago. Been the best thing I ever do. So I'm standing while I'm presenting to you all, but I go up and down, and exercise. It's a really healthy one for handling this sense of isolation, any of the stress that's going on, and the depression that I battle with over my life. I find that exercise is the best. Sleep, as General James Battle, one of my friends who I interviewed recently, we did airborne training together. He said it's the ultimate weapon is sleep. It leads to 30% more performance during your day if you get sufficient sleep. And we're talking about 8 hours to flush it through. And then, so sleep, really crucial. And I wear this Whoop strap, whoop.com. It registers how much sleep I have versus what I need. It looks at my recovery from the night before with my heart rate variance and my resting heart rate during sleep. And it looks at my cardiovascular strain from the exercise I do and from activities I'm dealing with. And then the breathe. Guys, mindfulness is the key thing in handling many of the things, to be more focused, to reduce stress and depression, and also to just generally happiness. Those who do mindfulness and also the gratitude journal can increase your happiness by about 25%. Focus. Now, there's a great book called Deep Work by Cal Newport, who's I think he's a Harvard professor. Book is great, but the bottom line is most people's productive time is after that early morning exercise, when you've had your shower, changed, had your breakfast. That's the good time to do focus. Don't do shallow work, check social media. I don't look at social media till about midday, unless I'm posting a morning recording that I've got or a podcast. But that's just to do that. I'm not filling my mind with all the depressing stuff from the news and people trying to churn up bad stuff. I'm filling my mind with the Daily Stoic, the gratitude journal, and what I want to focus on. And if I have a proposal to do or something, I give it in 40-minute chunks. I nail it, and I turn off airplane mode for all those, turn off everything else, and I just deliver that. And after that, you've eaten the frog. You've had the most difficult thing of the day, and everything else is much better. Then you can do shallow work. But 40 minutes, 5-minute break, maybe another 40 minutes, and then the other stuff, checking all your emails and things like that. But hit the big things early when you've got the most energy. And Prosper is looking after your health, well-being, and your financial wealth. What's the next question we got, Alex?
I've got a bunch of questions. So the poll has been, I put a prompt up there. More people have put their answers in now. Focus is double isolation and exercising now. That's gone. Interesting. Definitely, I would say for myself as well, it's been, focus is just that is the hardest thing that I've got at the moment as well. And trying to do, like you say, eat that frog in the morning and do the most important kind of deep work. So questions, got a really good one from Umesh here. What are your thoughts on how to build resilience and leadership principles into a new business that has just launched before a reputation or brand has been built? Great question.
Resilience and reputation, just been launched. Depends, of course, what the business is, but I think the principles are that it is
hospitality. I think
hospitality. Okay. Yeah, I've got a number of people I know in hospitality. Friends of mine who run a hotel, just had to close it. Other companies that I work with who are in the travel industry and have no revenue coming in at all. So in some cases, you have to make a call. Is this sustainable? Do you want to commit good money after bad, or are you going to have to come out of it and change, try something completely new? But if you think it's got a chance of going for it, then do commit yourself. But also you need to build in reserves and cash flow, because a lot of people are finding in this crisis, and I think this will go on for 1 year to 2 years in different forms. We may come out of lockdown in I don't know, 2 months' time, maybe. But the ripples of this will go on for years. And so cash flow is king. And if you haven't got cash, your business is going to dry up and die very quickly. One of the companies I'm with, it was making 250 million revenue a day, it now makes zilch, nothing at all. How do you keep 30,000 people going when that's going on? It's a real challenge. But I work with a lot of smaller companies, with CEOs of these startup companies and smaller companies, and they've got to be certain that they've got the backing. Have they got a VC? Have they got some investors? And have what he's designed, is it ready for the modern age? Because there's a different world now. Can it be done online? Can it be done virtually? Can it be done leanly? And has he got enough cash flow? But it's personal example, and it's clients buying that individual. So that's where your resilience and your brand and reputation come from. It's what people say about you when they've met you, and it's the fact that you're interested in them. That would be my advice.
Great answer. Okay, so and interested, Jonathan. So people question that come in. What happened to you, your business immediately after lockdown? What's keeping you up at night?
Yeah, I found that in the coaching world and leadership development and speaking and team events, that it literally fell off a cliff. Everything going along well. And I, for various reasons, with other commitments that I had, was paying a lot of what I was earning out to various different places, including charities. And overnight, it fell off a cliff. And I didn't have massive reserves, lots of savings and cash flow. So I have had to take unprecedented steps of delaying, getting mortgage holidays, getting loan holidays, terms with people, and really going out and linking up again with my old clients to help them, sometimes complimentary sessions, doing things for free with executive teams and CEOs, because the way you treat people and the way you're there for them in the bad times, when the good times come, they will remember you. And so I'm really working twice as hard as I was before, with hardly any of the income, but all the expenditure going out. And I'm having to play the longer game and hold my nerve, because I know this might take a year or 2 years to do that, and doing everything I can to reduce my leverage, sell things off, get rid of it, get rid of debt, and make it as light and as lean an organization as I can be.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for doing what you can to get in touch with your existing clients, so that when we do come out of this, and a lot of those industries obviously more physical, that you are at the forefront of people's minds, and you've been seen to be helping, and it's come from a genuine place as well.
Yeah, and staying with that, Alex, that you reminded me of a story of I think it was Unilever, Palmolive soap and things like that during the Second World War. During that crisis, many firms gave up the efforts to keep in touch with their customers and their previous customers, and just tried to produce stuff for the War Office and to be part of it. But Palmolive soap kept their advertising going and kept in touch with all their former clients. So when the war was over, they just took off, because people had not forgotten them, and they'd worked in keeping close with their clients. So remember, as was said to King Solomon, when things were good, his slave would whisper in his ear. This was his brief, to whisper to the king many times a day, "Sir, sire, this too shall pass." And when things were bad, he said, "Sire, this too shall pass." So remember, guys, in this crisis, this will pass, but prepare yourself. It might take 2, 3, 4 years longer. And I don't think the rate that you charged before will be what you'll be able to get in the future. So you've got to think about doing things very differently from how you did them before, because it won't be the same. And if you think of the 1929 depression, and this will be the 2002 to the 2011 depression, the only reason that came to an end was in 1939, we had the Second World War. And in the lead up to that, countries mobilized large numbers of redundant people to build autobahns in Germany and big dam projects in America and in the UK and railways and all sorts, so that the state put lots of money in to get people back to work. Now, I'm praying and hoping we don't have a war, but it's a very unstable time. So the ripples of this will take a long time. So be prepared. Hope for the best. I'm not a pessimist, but prepare for the worst, and don't be surprised by it. And remember, cash flow is king.
Yeah, 100%. So question. So Jonathan, I started my own consulting business, hospitality and entertainment, 10 months ago, also changing countries from Spain to the UK. Now I'm obviously highly affected. My projects are all more than on hold, and sometimes I find myself struggling with thoughts if this has been the right decision. Any recommendations for me, please, Julia?
Yeah, Julia, my thoughts are with you, because you've walked into a sector that is going to be devastated for a long time. And you only need to look at was it 12,000 laid off by British Airways? I think people are going to do things very differently in the future. I think they're going to travel less. When it comes back, the social distancing of how many people you can have in places, and a whole range of things will be affected. So it's your call, but I would seriously have a look at, I'm in a sector, if that's the one you're in, that has been devastated and probably will be for some years to come. I may be completely wrong. It may bounce back in 2 years' time, but can you last that long? Is there something else completely different? Are you young enough and flexible enough to rebuild and rebrand yourself doing something different? Look at your skills, look at what you're passionate about. What else could you do? Who else do you know? You'll have a series of connections of who you can meet. Could you go into the consulting world, dealing with different types of people? I remember when I left the army, I knew all about the army for 20 years. I knew I did my MBA. I wanted to be in management consulting. Well, I began in defense and government, which wasn't the area I wanted to begin in, but I began there, and then I could move into the private sector. And then I was doing something completely different from what I was doing. And then ultimately onto coaching. And now I'm leadership coaching, still doing what my calling was, why I was put on the planet. But work out, what is your calling? If it's not going to be that, sometimes life deals you a tough blow, but you got to wake up, smell the roses, and have a bit of slap therapy. Be kind to yourself, but do something that's going to survive and thrive in the future.
Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, I mean, it's chatting last night. We were doing a live stream with all Virgin crew and people, having just seen that news at BA, it just makes them, obviously stokes up the anxiety levels and the stress levels as well. And yeah, who knows? And a lot of what you just touched on as well with regards to hospitality and transport, those industries, when you think they're being encouraged to restart, but with social distancing, a lot of those businesses makes no financial economic sense to open a cafe or fly a plane where there's not enough people to cover the cost of the fuel or the overheads for the. It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. So our poll, thank you everybody for contributing to that. That's now gone. Focus is now gone to half of all the votes as well. That's gone up again.
Let's just stay with focus for a minute, since it's hit so many people, as well as the book Deep Work by Cal Newport. I had a really interesting, I'm going to post it on LinkedIn tonight, interview just earlier on with General Jonathan Shaw, Special Forces, Army officer. He was in the Falklands War, Iraq, Afghanistan, but a really humble but powerful leader, but admitted when he got things wrong. But he talked about focus and what we call in the military commander's intent, or back to purpose, meaning and purpose, PQ, on the things that we had before. And he said, you've got to be really clear on your intent, how you want things to go, and then everything else falls in behind it. Because if you know what your purpose is, in fact, if I just go up to purpose, here we are. Be authentically yourself. Everyone else is taken. Then live your life on purpose rather than off purpose. Be very clear what it means to be you, what your strengths are. And there's three circles which overlap. What you love doing. The next Olympic ring is your unique talents. And the third one is what the market wants and will pay for. And in the middle of all that is what we call your zone of destiny. That was what you're meant to do. In my case, It's what I'm doing now. Even though these times are tough, I know this is what I'll come back to do. I'll scrape through somehow. When the times get better, I'll hopefully limp through and learn from it, improve things, modify it, put more stuff online, do more coaching online, things like that, as well as being down in London where our office is and where most of the work is, and doing speaking again. But I think people's focus, you've got to be clear on your purpose and your vision and what gives your life meaning. Because when you're living your life on purpose, people buy you. You don't have to even sell. They go, Alex Chisnell, he's the man for podcasts. If you want to find someone for podcast, go to Alex. He's given you, given me great advice, given other people great advice. That's where you go. You get known for what you're doing. But if you're doing something that's wishy-washy and your heart's not in it, why do you expect anybody else to buy you? So focus comes from that intent of what you want to do, what you're about. And I suppose as well, it's back down to here, the legacy. Hopefully not like this guy leaving mayhem and devastation. I don't think that's supposed to be the UK after Boris finishes with it, but it may be, I'm not sure. But that's our businesses maybe when we've saved the NHS. Oh, but there's no businesses left. Oh yeah, don't worry about that. We've saved the NHS. I've got a brother who's a doctor in the NHS and 2 nephews who are intensive care doctors. So I very much believe in that. But I think it's a very difficult balancing act that we've got going on. When do you try and save the economy rather than kill it? It's a really tough one. But having a focus, so you're clear on what your legacy is, and that you leave things better than you found them rather than leaving a wasteland. So that's why focus is really important. What else have we got?
Thanks. Yeah, a couple of questions that I haven't got to yet that I'm going to go back and find. Where was Tess's? Tess says, my search and rescue team has a lot of people who are unable to train together or act on our shared values. We're using webinars to keep some training together. What other tips do you have for us, please, Tess?
So search and rescue. And the topic was, what's the focus?
So they are unable to train together or act on their shared values. They're using webinars to keep some training together. Any other tips to bring them together?
Well, Tess, if you reach out to me as a gift to you and the team, because you do such amazing work, and I have huge admiration for search and rescue, I'd happily give you a complimentary facilitated Zoom session. And I'll take you guys through just drawing out from you what is the best in you, what's working well, and also what is it that you need to do to look after each other, and also focus on what your purpose and meaning is, and how can you be more creative in these times? Because these times when we are stuck and not able to do things the way we used to do, gives us the chance for some innovation and creativity. So happily do an hour's session with you guys by Zoom. Get in touch through Alex, and I'll help you guys out. Okay.
Thanks, Jonathan. And look, a lot of people are struggling with that. I was interviewing Josh White earlier, one of the co-founders of Can of Water. You might have seen the black and white cans in Tesco's, Selfridges, wherever. And he said the hardest thing, he said he really struggled for the first 2 weeks of this lockdown. And the hardest part was literally trying to liaise with his team, trying to get what he wanted to across from his team, because he said so many people were contacting them and saying, you guys must be killing it at the moment. Everybody needs water. And he's like, we've lost 95% of our revenues because they've shut all of the retail outlets where people buy our products. So it affects everybody in all parts of society without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, just talking with some of my clients and chairmen. So, for example, one who's on the board of Tesco said, they've had their best year ever, and they've just hired 50,000 people as extra drivers, delivery, handing out things in the supermarket. So there are some that people need more of. My daughter works for Ocado in their strategy and their development center, and they're thinking of innovation and technology and ways of doing things differently so they can handle better when they've got the next virus, because there will be another one in some years' time, particularly with the way of our intensive farming and the way we're living cheek by jowl with massive farms which aren't looking after their spillover into society. And so they're winners, but then you've got people like Whitbread who are producing loads of beer and pubs, and they're losers. or those in the travel industry. And then there's others who are in financial services, who actually, some of the big banks are making even more money than ever. And if you try and borrow, as I did, from I will not name the bank to shame it, but my business bank, I normally got a loan at 3.25%. I wanted to have this C-bill, see if I could borrow a loan and perhaps pay that off, because interest rate's only 0.1%, so it must be a good deal. 6.75% they wanted, pay back in 3 years. That's usury. That's not helping the poor customers. They're taking advantage. And as someone would say, I wouldn't say it, taking the piss, because that's just taking advantage of those of us in difficult times. So some are doing well, some are coming through with great courage and humility, and others are just taking advantage of the vulnerable.
Yeah, I had chatted to Lord Billamoria, the Cobra Beer founder, a couple of days ago on here, and he was giving us the most up-to-date stats, like the first House of Lords meeting to happen via Zoom. He'd literally just come straight off the course, so he had some really up-to-date information, and he was saying still there was something like 300,000 businesses had applied for the loans, but only 30,000 had been given, and something like 10 billion had been lent, but there's 330 billion allegedly to borrow. And you know, other countries like Germany, he said, they were giving the loans, you know, approving them in a day. You know, the story that we were having on the call, people, you know, 4 or 5 weeks still waiting, no answer. We'll give you a call back.
I can't afford to go through all the bureaucracy and the paperwork, and they wanted my cash flow projections. Cash flow projections?
What
in a
cash flow
crisis
projections?
of this kind of thing? Oh, well, you're too high a risk, so we're not going to lend you it. Or, yeah, but it's at this rate. Why would I borrow at double the rate that I was paying before the crisis? That's not helping me. That's screwing me over.
Yeah. So last questions, folks. Got one from Alison. Anyone else wants to put one in? We've probably got time for one more after this. Thank you very much for the kind offer. Tess said, thank you so much. That's amazing. Hazem says, thank you very much. So Alison says, half of our charity has been furloughed and the remainder are working from home. How can I keep them focused and look after their mental health and well-being?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So again, it's the same kind of thing.
It is, yeah.
I find doing Zoom sessions with a facilitator, it doesn't have to be me, it could be somebody else, where there's a process, there's a discipline where everybody has the chance. So I was speaking to a charity based in Jordan, working with NGOs, and we had a really good session. They were all over the world, these different people, but we had a lot of fun on just an hour Zoom session, talking about what's working well in their lives, and also what would they like to hear about, answering their questions in a practical way of things that they could actually do to look after their health and their well-being, their sense of isolation, their stress, some of the things about exercises and stuff they could do. But it's all about getting a discipline and a routine and micro habits and practice it day after day. Imagine this is going to be this way for a year to 2 years. Keep it going. Don't give up and just slob it out and let it all go. Big mistake. Keep going. Keep going. It's a marathon, this. Keep going.
Barry says, your podcasts are very inspiring, Jonathan. Who inspires you?
Who inspires me? Well, many of the people I actually have on the podcast, including you, Alex, actually. I haven't perhaps told you that. I think when we first met at the Festival Enterprise at Birmingham, I just was so inspired to do podcasts because of your story about Virgin and what you'd done and how you went from radio into this, and that you like to see people really get their message, their word out there. But as I might have mentioned at the beginning of my talk, I think both my father and my mother were great inspirations to me. And that's why I'm doing the work I'm doing, both helping guys like you today, but also the charity work we do for the Inspiring Leadership Trust. And if anybody wants to help these people who are going through abuse and difficult times, just go and find the Inspiring Leadership Trust, go onto the website. Even if it's 10 quid or 50 quid, just please give something. It would be a really appreciated gesture to the charity.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to do a last check of our poll, Jonathan, just to see if there are any last questions. I've just given everyone the opportunity. Anyone want the last question? Oh, we've got some questions coming on the private channel. let's have a look here. There's two I've answered. Tess's. So Ruth says, hi, Jonathan. What do you suggest are the best ways to motivate our team remotely? So a lot of people talking about the same thing, obviously. And I think, as Jonathan said, consistency is key there. You know, a lot of people will start this kind of thing, but you know, it is a marathon, not a sprint, like Jonathan says again. So I think for me, it's being consistent with this kind of communication, because a lot of people are just going to drop straight off it. You know it, they're not going to be in it for the long haul. But consistency there is key. Anything else you want to add to that, Jonathan? A lot of similar themes here, obviously.
Yeah, I think what we call AM and PM bookends, the start and end of your day. The day you can't control very much, but the beginning and end of your day can. And Alex and I have spoken about this. These micro habits, the Atomic Habits by James Clear is very good, the American. And in it, it's these micro habits. And so my day begins, I get up, I read the Daily Stoic, I fill out my gratitude journal. I'm 58, so I do my 58 press-ups, not all in one go, 10s, but literally following each other quite quickly. I do some yoga poses and stretch the old back from my parachuting days, because I'm a bit crocked from that, and my disability that I had from being in the army. And then I do some exercise, like go for a run with Leigh or a cycle ride with her, and then the shower, the breakfast, healthy breakfast, and then I'm into the day in a really good way. And I haven't even looked at social media yet and depressed myself with that. Haven't done shallow work. I've gone straight into deep work. I'd encourage you to do that.
That's great. Yeah, you mentioned that to me this morning as well, Jonathan, when I checked the news first thing. And like, you clearly picked up on my energy levels were a little down this morning, whereas now I'm like that after like 3 of these. I'm totally fired up and energized and looking forward to finishing the day strong. And yeah, I second that. For me, it's having those two bookends to the day, and whatever merry hell may rage in between them, you can control those two things. And you know, maybe Jonathan, a good podcast, because one of the most popular podcast episodes I ever did was me talking about the commonalities in the business leaders I'd interviewed in their daily routines. And maybe an episode for you is to kind of collate that information and do your personal take at this time. That'd be a good one to get out, I reckon, in the next couple of weeks, to be honest with you. Yeah, clearly a lot of people are asking for similar advice.
Yeah, we just got to episode 50 in the podcast, which you said something to celebrate with David Hudson from the SES. It's going out tomorrow morning. Episode 50 is going out on Inspiring Leadership with me on Apple and Spotify and the others, thanks to you, Alex. And also another friend of mine who's been on it has done a sort of themes. He's done 3 videos of the themes that he's picked up and listening to all 50 podcasts.
Yes, so yeah,
very interesting.
Yeah, Julia says yoga is great for mental health. So I do yoga now. I discovered it a year ago, last May, and I do yoga every morning for 25 minutes, and 100%, because it's an element of mindfulness to it as well, really, and focus, I think, as well as being great for flexibility and strength as well. So yeah, I wholeheartedly subscribe to that, Julia. Thank you for being so active today, Julia, as well, and everybody else who's posted up here. Loads of people from, like I say, all over the world. So that's brilliant. Maybe we'll get you back on in a couple of weeks, Jonathan, as a follow-up, see how people are doing. People's, I reckon the poll could be different. So we finished up, 48.3% was focus, and then equal split between isolation, stress, and exercising, or 17.2%.
Great.
Awesome. Well, thank you all very much indeed. Stay safe, stay well. Thank you again, Jonathan. Appreciate you as always. Always sound advice. And I've posted up a link to your LinkedIn, because that is the easiest thing I can get hold of whilst I'm chatting at the same time. Loads of thank yous coming in from Natasha, Julia, Tess, etc. Steve, thanks. Thank you all very much. Couldn't do it without you, obviously. We need a good audience, which we've got today. So brilliant. Bang on the hour. Thank you kindly, Jonathan. Thank you all very much. The replay will be up as well. So we get a lot of replays, a lot of people watching on the replay. And this will then go from our website to the YouTube page as well. And if you need it, amazing. Thanks so much, says Umesh. Douglas says some great advice. And if you want the video for this, Jonathan, for your YouTube, let me know and I'll download it and send it over to you.
Do that, yeah. That'd be great. I'll post it on my YouTube.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Really nice to meet you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Keep